For months now, Russia's been cracking down on journalism and dissent in the country. Now it's abruptly kicking CBC News out altogether.
It's a sad day. I mean, we are all deeply, deeply disappointed.
Since the Russian invasion, Moscow passed laws to silence foreign media, threatening to jail reporters up to 15 years for even describing this conflict in Ukraine as a war. Today, Russia called CBC a propaganda mouthpiece and said it's stripping staff of visas and accreditation.
We are just making a retaliatory step.
2 months ago, Canada's broadcast regulator banned this Russian state-controlled TV channel from Canadian airwaves. Russia says CBC could be allowed back if that ban ends.
Canada understands that it's not right to close Russian TV stations. So when Canada stop using censorship in media.
CBC News and its journalists are completely and entirely independent of any government or agency. So we don't have anything to do with those decisions.
44 years of continuous reporting from Russia now ends. The Bureau documented pivotal moments in history: the Cold War, collapse of the Soviet Union, political upheaval. Now CBC News forced out because of the war in Ukraine.
It's unfortunate but not surprising that he's trying to shut down strong journalistic institutions.
It is clear that Putin and his enablers cannot imagine a world in where the press is free and doesn't take its marching orders from the government.
The editor-in-chief of CBC News says that it will continue to cover Russia as best as it can, but that it will be more difficult. Russia says staff have 3 weeks to close the bureau and to cease operations. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Briar Stewart is one of the CBC journalists being kicked out of Russia. Earlier, I spoke with her from Kyiv. So, Briar, what's your sense? Why is this happening right now?
Well, this is just really the latest attempt by Russia to try to quash any kind of independent journalism about their country. Like, even before I arrived in Moscow, which was just at the end of August, you already had so many Russian journalists that are independent being labeled foreign agents. You had some foreign journalists that were being expelled. But things became substantially worse after February 24th when Russia invaded Ukraine. The government brought in new laws, fake news laws, discrediting the military. And, you know, there was a very strong signal that they did not want journalists to operate there, and certainly not independently. But still, this came as a shock today.
So Canadians have really relied on the CBC in Moscow for decades. And I'm curious, picking up on what you just said, can you characterize how the capacity to report has changed?
It's become substantially harder, and part of that just has to do with how the government there, brands journalists. Like, even when we were trying to do stories that were sort of positive, like we wanted to do a story on a group that was delivering firewood to people who didn't have gas to heat their homes, and they were interested at first until they found out we were Canadian, and they said, no, we don't want to be associated with any kind of work that you do. After the invasion, we wanted to do a story on sanctions, and Botox clinics are very popular in Russia. There was a run on Botox clinics because the product wasn't going to come in as it was before. And at first they agreed, same thing happened. They called back the next day and said, actually, you're from an unfriendly country, so we can't talk to you. So, when you're facing that kind of resistance in those kind of situations, you have to appreciate just how difficult it is to talk to people about truly sensitive matters like, number of military deaths.
One last thought. What happens next for you and especially the local Russian staff?
Well, the local staff, our Russian staff, is really, the priority right now because they cannot work for us in Russia anymore. But as far as CBC's coverage goes, as far as what we'll be doing, myself and my producer, Corinne Semenoff, we're going to keep covering Russia. It's going to be a challenge because we can't be there, but it's very important to keep covering it now more than ever, and we're just going to have to do it outside its borders.
All right, Briar, thank you very much to you and the whole team there, okay?
You're welcome.